QB Chase.
G'day, listeners. This episode is proudly brought to you by our major sponsor, Gym Journal. Please use the code MATTER, all capitals, at checkout, and you'll receive a discount on your next purchase. Please find the link in the description. G'day, listeners, and welcome back to another special episode of the Matter Mentality podcast, where we talk all things training, nutrition, and psychology to optimize your performance. Today, we are joined by another very special guest from across the pond. Big Paul Oneid. How are we doing, brother? Thank you for jumping on between it's always at that chaotic time of year where it's like between Christmas and New Year's, no one knows what the fuck's going on and what day it is, but we've decided to throw a podcast in there.
Yeah, why not? No, I'm doing great, man. Thank you so much for having me on. It's a pleasure. I'm glad we were able to connect a few weeks back and looking forward to having a good conversation today.
Yeah, man, I've been excited for this one for a while. As soon as Cav kind of put us in touch, I was like, oh, another dude I can bro out with.
Oh yeah.
Gav, like being the so for all listeners, if you haven't gone back and listened to my episode on Paul's podcast, please do go show some love and jump on and have a listen to all the other guests that he's had on there. Fantastic episodes there for sure as well. So for those who don't know, we did actually meet at the Coach Catalyst Summit. You're probably the first North American that we haven't met through the summit, but rather that we've met online, obviously through Cav and Cav's connections. Paul is one of the members of the mastermind group that we're now a part of. So big thing that we really want to do is just connect with more driven people that are trying to change their game, change their field, change their area. So the mastermind group is obviously fantastic for that. It's just full of people that are just excelling at what they do and what they want to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I just joined, I had a couple of calls so far. After our weekend in Washington, D.C. with Cab, it was definitely hit home that I needed to surround myself with that sort of people more often. I've spoken quite a bit about how in my daily conversations and in the work that I do, very seldom am I put in a position where my ideas are challenged.
Yeah.
And that weekend, it was just challenge after challenge after
Yeah.
challenge. And I respond very well to that sort of feedback. I love to be proven wrong because every time I am, my paradigm shifts and something fantastic happens. And since that weekend, it's just been growth, growth, growth. So it was definitely a group that I wanted to be a part of, and getting linked up with yourself and all the other members of the group was just phenomenal. And I already have a lot of them booked up for podcasts, so
Nice.
It's been great for that too.
Yeah, exactly the same way. We've got like a list from it coming into 24. I'm like, we've kind of tapped the Australian market of who I really know to talk to and want to talk to. I'm like, who's next? Who else can we get over there that we can start building like connection and deeper understanding of and appreciation for? So, everyone's unique approaches and skill sets just makes that group so complete. Like, there's just so many different fields and avenues to learn from that you want to sort of like dive into and understand. It's one of the things that's definitely making us realize that we have to get stateside more frequently. One of the calls we had with Cav as well was to plan how much more frequently we can go to America for actual, like work summits, seminars. Like, we've been in contact that, hey, we want to come to America and work on some workshops with yourself and like put some training seminars together, jump into some stuff there, like actually tee up work and events over there that can really start to build momentum for us to move over there. And it's becoming more apparent to us that we need to be in America, or at least the North Americas.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know much about the Australian market, but I do know that the lifting community is very close knit. It seems like a really cool place to be for that. But in terms of opportunity, the US is definitely much more open. Canada, you know, I would say that I'm quite well known in Canada, but even transitioning and having lived 6 years in the States, there's just so many more people.
Yeah.
Like the entire country of Canada's population fits in Florida, right? So
It's very similar to Australia, right?
yeah, so it's a bit of a different bag of cats, so to speak.
You guys are basically just us, but with snow. Very similar
Yeah,
population diversity and scattered population and limits of population.
yeah, definitely.
But mate, moving forward, Give us. So I want to dive in a bit more to how we get to Coach's Core and how we get to your love of the game and kind of like
Sure.
be very similar to myself in the drive to just simply be better and want to change things and make things improve. And I think this
Mhm.
industry needs a fuckload more of that. And I don't care if you swear on this podcast; people know how intense I get about things, so
Perfect.
go nuts. I think more people need to be driven and passionate about what we do in the game, that the role that we play in people's lives, and the abilities we have to shape people's futures. And it's
Mhm.
very clear that that is where you fall, and that's something I'm excited to get into. So, give us a bit of a background as to how you got into coaching, education, wanting to mentor, knowing that this was kind of the route for you.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, if you take it all the way back, I did my undergraduate degree in human kinetics, the University of Ottawa here in Ottawa, Ontario. During that time, I played basketball my freshman year, actually. For those of you who don't know, I'm like 5'9", 245. So I definitely wasn't 245 pounds back then. Um, and then I played football as well after my freshman year. I had a pretty bad knee injury, and it was
Mhm,
through the rehab of that that I really fell in love with high performance
mhm,
and started training for athletics as opposed to just, figuring it out along the way.
mhm,
Dove into Paula Quinn, Eric Cressy, Joe DeFranco, Zach Evanesh, that whole group, discovered
mhm,
Elite FTS, and really decided that I wanted to be a college strength coach. That's what I wanted to do. So as soon as I graduated, um, I looked for who was the best strength coach in the country at that point. It was
mhm,
a gentleman, Ron McKeefery at the University of South Florida. I moved down there, did an internship, applied for their master's program in exercise science, started that about halfway through. I got a full-time job in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania at Robert Morris University.
mhm,
So I moved up there, did a second master's degree in sports management. As soon as I graduated, I got a job at the University of Tampa so I could move back to Florida and finish my degree, my first master's degree.
mhm,
So I was there for 8 months, finished my degree, became a head strength coach back in Canada at Queen's University. I was there for a year, decided that it wasn't the route for me anymore. I didn't want to be in college athletics anymore.
mhm,
And quite frankly, I didn't want to move back to the US, even though I had a number of job offers. I wanted to be closer to family, and that
mhm,
meant that I had to change careers. So I went and decided to work in disability rehabilitation. So I worked for an insurance company helping people on disability get back to work. And that's where I was first exposed to the mental health side of rehabilitation. Got a ton of continuing education that I'm super grateful for. And it
mhm,
was during the 6 years working in that position that I started coaching remotely more seriously. I had always had remote clients on the side. You're working
mhm,
in college, you have the athletes here and there that want help, or friends or family, whatever. But I started building Master Athletic Performance during that time, which is my coaching company.
mhm,
Got to a point where I was actually making twice as much money online as I was in my full-time job,
mhm,
and decided, hey, I got to go all in on this. And then a year later, I my wife, who we were just dating at the time, she was working for another company and decided that she wanted to go off on her own. I said, listen, come work with me. Let's see what we can build. And from that point on, so this is a year and a half ago, we have added four other coaches. We have more than, I'm trying to think, 2.5x our business as
Nice.
a team. And during that time, I also launched Coach's Corner University, which is an education platform geared towards providing a post-secondary education to coaches,
Mhm,
but applicable in the real world. So people
yeah.
talk about evidence-based all the time, but evidence is only as effective as your ability to apply it, and that's
Yes.
really what I try to focus on. And we recently came out with a number of accredited courses, which is the
Nice.
direction that we're going to go forward with in 2024. By the end of Q1, we should have four accredited courses live on the site with the goal of having 10 by the end of the year.
Epic.
And also during that time, I started doing mentorship more formally. I've always mentored coaches. A lot of my clients who become coaches, I've continued to mentor. And I figured it was just time to formalize the process. So I
Mhm,
launched the MAP mentorship program in 2021. And since then, 33 coaches have been through the program. I've had a number of coaches break that six-figure barrier. multiple six-figure barrier, quit their full-time jobs, get their first 10 clients, all those cool milestones. And it's something that I'm very, very excited about, launching a new group mentorship in 2024 as well. So a lot of growth coming in through that. But this is all guided by, you mentioned about changing the industry, and the tagline for my companies, both Coach's Corner and Master Athletic Performance, is raising the bar. And that's something that for me, like I have a bar tattooed across my shoulders to the point where it's like everything that I do is focused on raising the bar, whether it's for myself and my personal endeavors, my own athletics, my relationship with my wife, my work. I'm always looking to level up and always looking to move forward. And that can mean so many things within so many different
Mhm.
contexts. But if I approach every day trying to be my best self with the intent of moving forward, good things happen. And there's probably a lot to tease out of that, but that's my story in a nutshell. I also competed in powerlifting. I competed in bodybuilding. I was a much better powerlifter than I was bodybuilder, but I've done both.
We've dabbled in both. But no, you're
Yeah.
right. There's definitely a lot to tease out of that. But it's something to, I guess, even go back a bit further is, where do you think, because a lot of what you just said is very similar to myself, the growth orientation, the growth direction, the drive, a lot of it comes to me from a position of just not being satisfied and wanting to be the difference, or wanting to make the difference and make things better. I'm a big believer
Mhm.
that we need to leave behind a better system than we found, and that we stand on the shoulders of the people who came before us. So we need to make the platform for the people after us even better, whether that be in coaching, in performance, in the gym, with athletes, with clients, whatever it may be, with businesses that work with us. Where do you think yours stemmed from? Because I'm finding a lot of people, for similar to ourselves, have a sporting background, a growth background, a challenge background, a competitive background that kind of led them down the path of like, I need to be better. I need to make things better because I need to get better. Where do you think yours sort of started from? Because it would have originated from somewhere. As much as personality is very, it's kind of like 50-50 of innate versus developed. At a certain point, that love of growth and just simply wanting to be better started somewhere.
So if you want to get like super deep, originally it stemmed from a crippling sense of inadequacy. So
Mm-hmm.
I had to constantly prove to myself by achievements,
Mm-hmm.
that I was worthy, that I
Mm-hmm.
was enough. And I joke about that, but that it's true.
Mm-hmm.
And these insecurities can often be superpowers. You talk about,
Oh yeah.
imposter syndrome can make you the most prepared person in the room, but at the same time it can be crippling. And I've done a lot of therapy, I've been done a lot of self-reflection, and to the point where I genuinely pursue these things because I love it.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always loved training, but I've loved coaching and teaching more. The high that I get, and this actually hit home to me when I was doing my bodybuilding prep, because at that point was when my mentorship was taking off. So I'd be on mentorship calls, 6 to 8 hours a week of these in-depth 1 hour Zoom calls. And it didn't matter how tired I was. I would get on a call with one of my mentees and it would just light me up. And
Mm-hmm.
I would be go, go, go that whole hour. I was like, this is exactly what I should be doing.
Mm-hmm.
And it all started with a love for training, a love for knowledge, a love for growth. And while it led to these pursuits of achievement, now I realize that there is a much deeper meaning to that. Um, I've always been someone who's been driven for more. When I squatted 700 for the first time, it's like, cool, now let's squat 750. Cool, now let's squat 800. Cool, now let's squat 850. Right. And it's like, well, what is enough?
Yeah.
And I got asked that a lot. And I'm sure you get asked that quite often. You're a little bit younger than I am, but even especially now, I'm starting to get back into powerlifting training a little bit more. And now that my body's cooperating, and I get, when are you going to give it up? When is it enough?
Mm.
And I'm like, I'll give it up when I stop loving it.
Yeah.
And you know what? I did give it up when I stopped loving it 2 years ago. I stopped loving it because it hurt too much.
Yep.
But now I love it again. So
Yeah.
here we are.
Man, there's something just that I feel like a lot of people miss. So like, for us, yeah, I'm going to speak, kind of generality here on both of our behalves, but for us, there is just a love of doing. There is a love of growth and a love of drive and a love of development and like consistently pursuing betterment and making yourself into a better person, a better coach, a better figure. For a lot of people, they look at that like, I get this a lot, and I definitely imagine you do too, is it's the perception from say the average person. It's not an insult to the average person, but more so, the average 9 to 5 job. They knock off on a Friday. It's time to go to the pub or the club or the tavern or whatever it may be. And that's you have your weekend beers and you have your weekend drinks, and that leads to Saturday, Sunday of regretful decisions and hangovers and etc. So like, the standard kind of 9 to 5 life. Because we don't abide by that, it kind of it comes across as if like we're weird, we're different, we're obsessive, neurotic, crazy, strange. And it's hard for people to perceive that you can actually love your job, love your career, love your work. And so you don't want to stop doing it. Like to me, to both me and Brooklyn, the game of growth is ever growing, ever changing, ever progressing, and we just want to keep doing it. Like I couldn't think of a day where I stopped working on the business in the sense of like, I'll get to 50 and coaching will be over for me or something like that. Like everything about it will just be something that I do forever. Whatever direction that may be, wherever the company goes, wherever MA goes as a brand, it's just the growth of it all is what I want. Not so much the cash, not so much like the achievements in the end. Like, yeah, they're all great. I fucking love achieving. But there's just a uniqueness to just wanting to continually grow and be in love with the career that we're chasing and the results that we get with our clients, with the people we work with, seeing a smile on their face when you get those messages like, hey, I've cracked that first, $1,000 week, or I've cracked that first 20 clients, or, I just got down to 5% body fat. Like those messages I thrive off. And so I want to have my laptop with me on Christmas Day. I want to have my laptop with me Christmas Eve. I'm gonna probably be working New Year's Eve now and not waking up hungover on New Year's Day because I want to start the year rolling. Do you get a lot of that? I guess like that. I don't want to say criticism, but I definitely see it as like a commentary.
There's some pushback. I mean, I've done a very good job at curating the people that I keep in my circle. And I think that's been a really important part of my journey is managing my relationships. Uh, I also have a thing with expectations. So number one, I expect nothing of other people.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that to like people think that's weird, but like I don't even expect that my wife is going to wake up tomorrow and love me
Mm-hmm.
because when she does, I'm pleasantly surprised and it's a really great day. But in that, I could dive a little bit deeper into that, but I think that when you have no expectations of others, you can make conscious choices about everything that happens.
Mm-hmm.
I also I give zero fucks about anyone's expectations of me
Mm-hmm.
beyond my wife, my parents, my brother, and my clients. And the only reason my clients have expectations of me is because I've told them exactly what they should expect of me.
Mm-hmm.
So I can exceed them,
Yeah.
obviously. Um, but in saying that, perfect example. Last night, one of my closest cousins, he's having his first child. They had a baby shower. I showed up for 40 minutes and he knows me well, so I get no pushback from him. I showed up for 40 minutes. Hey, how are you? I love you. See you later.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, cuz like this is from other cousins. Oh, cuz like you're not gonna stay? Like, no, sorry, I have to work. Oh man, like can't you take a night off? I'm like, no, I really love what I do. So I'm really happy to prioritize that
Mm-hmm.
over this party where I can't eat anything, I don't drink. You know, I'd much rather get work done and help my clients than make small talk with people that I never see.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to him, I said, I hope you find something that lights you up the same way my work does.
Mm-hmm.
And he kind of was taken aback by it. And I knew he thought I was being a prick,
Yep.
but I genuinely meant what I said.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that he finds something that lights him up the same way that working with my clients and building my business and pursuing growth lights me up because then he would have no problem prioritizing the things that are important to him. And that's not to say that I don't take time off. I took Christmas Day off, and I took we took a week in the summer. We're going away for a week in 3 days, and we're not working while we're in Jamaica, mostly because we're getting married. But I build in those times because I do need time away. That's a need that I have. I do need time away to recharge. I also set very strict boundaries on when I'm working and when I'm not working.
Mhm.
8:30 p.m. every night, my alarm goes off and I shut my laptop. And those, like, again, everything feeds into everything else because of the expectations, the way I manage expectations and cultivate my relationships, because I have this very clearly defined vision within my business and my life. It allows me to directly prioritize the things I need to prioritize and deprioritize the other things.
Mhm.
That's why I can set a bedtime alarm. That's why I can set a wake up alarm. That's why I can say, hey, I can't, I never say I don't have time. It's
Mhm.
not in my vocabulary. I'm sorry, I can't prioritize that right now. And when you start using words the way they're meant to be
Mhm.
heard, people start to shift. So I don't get a lot of pushback anymore. Honestly, the only pushback I get, and it's getting less and less because it's a habit of mine, is sometimes I get so engrossed in what I'm doing that it does feed forward a little bit into time that I've allocated to other things,
Yeah.
mainly quality time with my wife.
Mhm.
But we have a great relationship in that she can look at me and say, hey, get your shit together. And I can say, hey, I'm sorry. And I close my laptop.
I love that. I love everything about that because it's exactly the way I see the world. And it's like once like one of the biggest points I think, especially coming into like the new year, that people can take away from this. And I would like to assume that a lot of our listeners are very driven, same way that that I am. My message is very similar to yourself. It comes through in everything we talk about. Like you're not going to hear me say like pandering commentary. So being this sort of direct and establishing these conversations, I think is important for people to hear that there's other normal people, normal like us. One of the biggest things that I noticed was a significant change in my life that you touched on was getting firm in boundaries and getting clear in communication. For a long time, I've told this story a couple of times and like gone through it also. You know, especially going through my rugby league career. Rugby league is a very bro culture, like boys' town. This is drinks after the game. Everyone's in the can bar. Everyone's on the hill. Everyone's watching the rest of the games play. You finish the game and go off and have a few more drinks. And it's very like you have to be in it to do that.
Mhm.
I never played for fun. Fun came to me from winning and growing and getting better. I played for the intention of contracts and trying to make it further. And like, I wanted to do this. This is what I dedicated 20 years of my life to. And to me, that's not
Mhm.
like that fun comes from that, right? Like, that is the fun to me is like, I'm committed to doing this. But it never eventuated, which is fine. Like, I knew where my limit was and had injuries, all sort of stuff we've talked in your podcast about.
Yeah.
But the thing that I struggled with in the early part of my 20s was, especially as my back injury occurred and things like that, leading up to that, was having boundary with the people that I was actually doing this for a career and doing this to try and push myself to be the best. Not because it was like, hey, cam bars at 6, game's over at 5, let's go get shit faced. As much as that's part of the culture. And one of the things that really started to change my life and the trajectory that we headed on was getting firm with the people around me about what my boundaries are. And if you want to remain a part of the circle of me and growing, you either accept it and come with me or you don't, and that's fine, but we're probably going to part ways. And it was received quite dickish, and I was never with the intent of being dickish or being a prick or being an asshole. But having got to the point where, like, early days of my first competitive season where I decided, like, look, this is what I'm going to do, there was commentary like, oh, you can have one drink, like come out for a night, we won't pester you about it, come out and have a drink, blah, blah, we'll just come out and we'll be fine. I was like, we'll try it out, see how it goes. Straight away, as soon as you get there, it's like, oh, what about if it's just a vodka dry, or this dry, this with a soda light, whatever. I'm like, no, I told you, I'm happy to come out, 11 o'clock, I'm going home. I've got sleep to do, I've got meals to prep, I've got training, cardio, all these things that come into prep. These are the things I'm going to do. And the strange thing was that the people that, and I've said this 100 times, but the people who benefited most from who I used to be were the ones that had the biggest problem with me changing. And they had the biggest drawback on my boundaries, on my limitations, on my restrictions. And yet the more that I curated the right environment, as you kind of put it previously, it became so much clearer to me about who I wanted around, the type of people I wanted to be around, the type of people that were like me, and that just accepting the normal sort of like trajectory just wasn't gonna cut it. And I think that's such a big thing that people can take, especially coming into the new year. By the time this comes out, you're gonna have new goals, you're gonna have business goals, career goals, education, training, nutrition, whatever it is, whatever the fuck it is. Hopefully you're not someone who's about to buy into kind of like a 4 week challenge or something and think that's going to change your life. Like it might, but whatever. But you're going to have to
7,500, bro.
so yeah. You're going to have to get so clear on your boundaries and your communication because a lot of people aren't going to be aligned with who you're trying to become. And I think that's something that a lot of people struggle with in the start. Like the research is quite clear on how bad the actual success rate of New Year's goals is. I wrote a whole article on it because it was so actually baffling how bad it is. A lot of that is that you go all in and change your entire life in 1 week. Everyone still around you is not that way inclined and hasn't done that. And now there's an
Mhm.
incongruence between the person you're trying to be, the boundaries that you've erected, and the people that you either used to associate with or still know or still hang out with, your couple, your family, your wife, your husband, whatever. They're all still set over here. And you're like, you know what? This year I'm cutting alcohol completely. And you've never done that before. They're not going to align with that. And you're going to get so much drawback and kickback and pushback and negative commentary just on that such a shift in mentality and I guess language that it's paramount that you get clear in the boundaries that you establish.
Mhm.
Like to me, that's just a no-brainer.
Yeah, so there's a few things that jump out to me about like this whole thought process is I come back to the expectations. It's like
Mm-hmm.
it's no it's not your job to live up to the expectations of other people. So when people have the expectation that you're going to go out, you have to set that boundary
Yeah,
to let them know, hey, your expectation of me is not something I'm willing to live up to, and however you feel about that is yours.
yeah,
It's not mine.
yep,
The next thing that jumps out to me is, especially when you talk about business owners or you talk about high achievers, you hear this in bodybuilding very often. It's a very lonely sport. Business ownership is very lonely. Being a
mm-hmm.
leader can be very lonely
Mm-hmm.
because in a lot of instances, I'll give you an example. So I have a younger brother.
Mm-hmm.
I have always been the big brother. In my relationships with my friends, I am the high achiever.
Mm-hmm.
In my relationships with my clients, I am the leader figure. Aside from my therapist and my wife, I don't have a person who I can vent to, seek advice from. And so I've had to go out and actively pay for those people through the
Yeah,
forms of mentorship or therapy or whatever.
mm-hmm.
The responsibility of responsibility is a very lonely place to be.
Mm-hmm.
I used to see that as a bad thing. Now I see it as a trade-off
Yeah,
because if I want to get and pursue the things that I want to pursue, the trade-off is it's going to be a little bit lonely.
mm-hmm.
I'm very fortunate that my business, in the same way as you, my business partner is my wife,
Yeah,
and we're phenomenal teammates, and we pull each other up when we need to be pulled up. But it's still lonely because I'm still the guy.
yeah,
And you have to be okay with that level of loneliness, and you have to embrace it as something that is necessary.
mm-hmm.
And in doing so, you need to know damn well that you need to reach out for help whenever you feel like you need it. And that was a thing in 2020, 2024 so that I learned in 2023, and I'm going to carry forward to 2024, is asking for help is something that I need to actively pursue.
Mm-hmm.
And it started with joining the mastermind. It's going to build into, a mentorship of some kind for myself. And that is necessary. It's part of the reason why I started my own business mentorship is I want to be that person for young business owners
Yeah,
who are stepping into this loneliness.
Hmm.
and don't know what to do with it.
Hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. That's like, there's such a, there's, there's something that it's, to word it? It's almost like the lonely gap, the loneliness gap, the evolution gap, where you go from who you once were or who you used to be, and you step into this role, or it's finally like you're starting to self-actualize, you're starting to reach that level of motivation where like, you know what, fuck everyone else and anything else going on. I am making this happen. And you step into that. There's this evolutionary gap, this loneliness gap between where you are or where you were, where you started, and where you want to be in these new environments with the right people. And there's a gap in there where you don't know the people that you need to know. You don't have the connection you need to have. Your friends aren't who you used to know, or perhaps aren't aligned with where you're going and what you want to become. So you see them less and less. Family
Mhm.
don't understand it because you're all in and you're full tilt and you're going at it. Whether it be business, whether it be your sport, whether it be whatever, you're all in this thing. There is a gap there that is just purely loneliness, and it's where the most intrinsic motivation is required, in my opinion, because that's where you're the one who has to sustain yourself, and your love of what you're doing is going to sustain and float the boat until you get to the next shore. Because the shit gets hard, it gets deep, it gets dark. It's like, fuck, is this the right choice? Economic situation, I'm a business at the moment. People aren't buying, or my product isn't really socially proven yet. You have to be the one to support yourself, float yourself, and sort of like push through it. And there's a lot of gap in there where you're like, who I was is not who I need to be. And the people I was around are not who I need to be around. But I don't know where that next circle is yet. And you got a lot of gap in there where you're kind of like traversing that plane by yourself.
Yeah, and it's funny because so when I met Cav for the first time at Swiss, uh, I asked him about boundaries because I was like, listen,
Mm-hmm.
man, like you're a coach, you're always going to be a coach. How do you set these boundaries when you've got so many things going on? And he started talking about lighthouses. And I
Mm-hmm.
was like, oh, that's funny. I have a lighthouse tattooed on my arm for that exact reason. He's like, what? And I'm like, yeah, I have a lighthouse. It's upside down here, but it's like
Oh yeah, 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 I see. Yeah.
not the most flexible guy. But I have a lighthouse tattooed on my arm because I have lighthouses in my life
Mm-hmm.
that when I'm floating through these waters in the dark,
Mm-hmm.
I have these lighthouses that I can look to and say, I'm still on track.
Mm-hmm.
A big one is my wife. Cab mentioned this as well, and it really resonated with me is as soon as I open this door to my office and I walk out and I look at my wife, it's immediately an integrity check of did I do the things I needed to do today for us?
Mm-hmm.
Right off the bat, that's a lighthouse. I have my accountant. He's a lighthouse for me from a financial standpoint. I have, the people that I look to as mentors that I have my therapist. She's a lighthouse on the mental health side for me. Um, and I have all like my parents are a lighthouse for me. And when we are in these dark waters, we need to have some sort of guiding light for us. And those are going to be different for different people. One thing I will say though, in that as we talk about this loneliness or as we talk about this gap in the friends you had versus the friends you need to have but don't know who they are, at no point are we advocating for burning bridges.
Oh God.
Because like
Yeah.
this is one thing where I see all too often is this glamorization of, if people don't understand what you're doing, you need to cut them out. It's like maybe you just don't hang out with them, but you're still a nice person.
Yeah.
And it was a comment that was someone made to me a few months ago. It was like, you really keep people at arm's length. And I was like, yeah, you know why, right? He goes, oh, I know exactly why. It's just really obvious. And I was like, so am I like not a nice person? He's like, no, you're super nice, but I can tell that I'm like just outside, like you're never gonna let me in. I was like, do you want to be let in? He's like, not really. I just thought it was really funny because it's true. I mentioned before the call that we have 29 people who are coming to our wedding. I would say seven of them know who I am, really,
Yeah.
and those are the only seven people in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm totally okay with that.
Yeah, there's that that interesting part to me is you're curating the circles and you're being very specific with who is coming in. And I think a lot of the time people fake or curate these facade of social groups and social interactions, like they have to maintain them, they have to be a part of them, they've got to show up for this friendship and blah blah blah. It's like, okay, what is the give and take in this relationship? If you're where you're trying to go and where you're trying to get to, like you said, we don't need to burn bridges. We don't need to cut
No.
people off with disdain or aggression or just being abruptly rude. But sometimes people will only want to go with you so far, and then eventually they either don't want to keep up or they can't keep up or they're going to hold you back. That's not a negative on them. It's just that they only know so much of where you want to go and they can only see the vision so much that you have. If we're not
Mhm.
surrounding ourselves correctly or pushing past that, you're going to get tethered to that rope and get tied down to where they are. And to me, it's like that escape mentality, that escape velocity sort of terminology where like you're trying to break past that initial group. And again, it's not to dismiss them or attack them. It's just simply where you are and where you're happy and content with is not enough for me. And I'm going to come back and visit you, and I'm going to come back and say good day. And like, I've got, we've spoke about in your podcast. I've got two godkids with my best mate of 18 years. Saw him Christmas Day. I'll see him once a quarter probably if things go well. But I said to him, I was like, one of my biggest goals in life is that I can succeed over in America and we can be over there and I can run my. I want to fly your two boys over. Say, I want to spend time with Uncle Ben and show them the world that I live in and have them like in the audience and be like, holy fuck, this is what like Ben's done with his life. Like that to me is like,
Mhm.
I don't have plans for kids, but like that to me is like, that's how I care and keep them involved, though I see them once every 3 months. Best mate, 18 years. But like that is all I need because I know he supports, he encourages, he's happy with me in my relationship. That's all I need from someone to be close to me. But I don't need to put on like this facade of like constant social circles and big groups and large amounts of people. Like, give me five, as Joey, what's his name said? What's his name? I always forget his name. Big Italian fella, comedian. Um,
Oh, Joey Diaz.
yeah, Joey Diaz, like, give me 10 motherfuckers and I'll take over the world. I'm like, that's all I need. That's all my circle
Yeah.
needs to be. And it's like that. I think there's a fear factor for people that like not having that 20, 30, 40 social group like size
It sounds
is
exhausting.
is a negative. And it's like, well, okay, but how many of that group are actually projecting you forward? And that's the question you start have to ask, especially as we come into the new year. I think for listeners, is not, but again, we're not burning bridges, not chastising or attacking anyone, but how many
Oh,
people in that social group that you're maintaining are actually projecting your growth and encouraging it, regardless of whether they're wanting to grow as well? Because you can still be supportive and encouraging and still be back here with your life and being satisfied. Like you want the white picket fence, two dogs, two kids, and the white shutters and the patio. Fantastic. But I want to own the castle. I want to fucking take over this kingdom. I want to dominate this area. I don't need you to come with me. But if we're still interacting and we're still like building together, you at least I still want that support and encouragement. Like not that like whole you don't have any balance or bring yourself back a bit or like you're going too far or you work too much. I don't need to hear that from you. I want to know that
yeah.
you have my back and that's it.
Yeah. I mean, you talk about like goals and stuff like that. And you mentioned, your best mate. That's a lighthouse for you, dude. If you
Mm-hmm.
know that you're on track to get to where you want to be so that you can have those kids in the audience, that's a lighthouse for you. A lighthouse for me is like we do want kids.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the reasons why, like, Liv and I have had this conversation as well, because I'm always pushing for more. I want to do more.
Mm-hmm.
She wants to grow her coaching business, but she wants to stay a coach. She has no desire to get into education. She has no desire, to do these large speaking engagements and things like that that I love doing. That's totally fine
Mm-hmm.
because of huge value that she has is the ability to be a mom.
Yep.
And she's going to grow her business to the point she could maintain it and be a kick-ass mom.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the reasons why I'm so driven to grow the business in the direction that I'm growing it is a lot of the revenue streams that we're working on are relatively passive
Mm-hmm.
or we'll say scalable.
Yep.
That will allow me to be the kick-ass dad that I want to be.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's another lighthouse. It keeps me
Yep.
focused on that future. And I think the people that I've curated in my life all support this vision.
Perfect.
And I don't really need many people in my life to, I love my alone time.
Hmm.
My favorite thing to do is hang out with my wife and watch a movie and eat some food.
Hmm.
I can do that. That's fine with me. Um, but the one thing that, I wanted to touch on was like this idea of growth and dominance. It's going to be different for every
Oh,
person
absolutely.
because with every level is a new devil.
Hmm.
Okay. This is something that I've really embraced this concept over the last year in that, the problems that we had when we were making 250 grand are not the same problems that we have when we're making 500,000.
Hmm.
And they're not going to be the same problems when we hit a million.
Hmm.
Those problems will escalate and likely we will get to a point where our revenue generation will mandate that we have better systems and more people involved.
Hmm.
Under no circumstances do I want to be in a position to manage a bunch of people.
Yeah.
So I know that's going to put a cap on the amount of growth that my company can see.
Hmm.
I am totally okay with that
Hmm.
because managing people, not my forte. Coaching, educating, interacting, forming relationships, that's what gets my rocks off.
Hmm.
If I can do more of that and grow the business, I'm going to grow it as far as I can take it. But as soon as it starts to be something that I hate doing, that's where we're gonna have a problem. I ran into that. So I previously had another business. We had an app. We had a health and fitness app. Um, it was primarily focused on habit change
Hmm.
and tracking different metrics associated to well-being and showing you how your daily habits led to these improvements in your perceived sense of well-being. Phenomenal app. At one point, we had over 500 users. It was doing great. But the moment I went from being boots on the ground, engaging with people and talking about the app to upper management,
Hmm.
I fucking hated it and the app
Yeah.
died. Very expensive lesson to learn. Guess what? Not making that same mistake again.
And that's like I think it's such a as a high performer that you are, and I think for the type of performers out there, it's knowing where your love resides, right? It's like knowing where your passion resides in what you're trying to do. Trying to fake it, trying to force something is one of the biggest downfalls I see a lot of people have, especially in like the kind of like fake hard mentality. Like people try to project how hard they are and how hard they work and tough they work. A lot of the time it's like that facade comes down because it just gets hard, it gets exhausting, it's a lie. You
And
aren't
it's
doing it.
so fucking transparent.
Oh yeah.
If you're putting on an act, we all know, dude.
Yeah, we don't need to constantly talk about how hard we're working. Sure, we share some content like, you know what, I love updating a new program for a client. They're excited to see it. It's like Sunday night. I'm like, fuck yeah, just Sunday, bank in the overtime hours. Your program's ready to go Monday morning, or
Yeah.
this is ready to go Monday for you. I've got this ready to go, and they share it. And they're just like, fuck you. I'm like, that's cool, but it's not like you know, we're clear on why we're doing it. We're clear on what our love is. We're clear on what our expectations of ourselves are, where we want to take it. So there's not a facade or an ego or a mask or just a fakeness to it. And I think a lot of people try to, especially this with this Goggins era nowadays, like everyone thinks they're carrying the boat. But let's be real. If you got thrown into Navy SEAL training, you collapse. The first thing, if you've ever read Goggins' book, if you've ever read How to Become the 0.1% by Gareth Timmons, fantastic book. The first thing you read is basically everyone that went in there with bravado and arrogance and ego were the first ones to fail. The ones who went in there that were yoked and jacked and talking the big game, like I can do fucking 1,000 pound deadlift, trying to over project how good they were the first ones to drop out. And it's so clear in the performance route and realm of anything, whether it be coaching, business development, training, nutrition, whatever it is you're doing. If you have to project it with a fakeness, it catches up with you. And it's so clear as day. Like there is a difference between people who just love working and love growth and love development and people trying to like pretend it.
I think that, there's a few things to me that I really try to project, especially to the people that I have the pleasure of working with on the business side of things, is if you show up as your authentic self, right?
Mm-hmm.
The most youest version of you,
Mm-hmm.
and you focus on driving value, your business growth happens by proxy.
Yeah.
It's just gonna happen.
Hmm.
You don't even have to think about it. It'll grow because the more you become, the more people you attract that are attracted to you,
Yes.
the more people that are attracted to your message and your product, and the more you're able to drive value for that person, they'll start talking about you, and then boom, you have this referral based business that never needs to be nurtured. um, Even to this day, most of our clientele are referrals, of course, because we have a great product.
Hmm.
And when you show up as yourself, you never fear being found out.
Yeah,
You
there's
never fear being discovered as a fraud because you're being yourself. I did a YouTube video on imposter syndrome, and one of the things was if you feel like an imposter, you probably are one to some degree.
hmm.
You're trying to be someone you're not. And with social media, people think I'm not very likable, so I'm going to be someone who is likable. And then any sort of validation you get from that is just reinforcing the fact that you're not likable,
Yeah.
but this other version of you is.
Yeah.
Someone immediately comes to mind. I'm not going to mention his name, but the guy he's an incredibly great human being, but puts on a facade online. He's got over 100,000 YouTube subscribers. He's crushing it on YouTube, but he's one of the most unhappy people I've ever met.
Mm.
And if that's not the perfect example of what we're talking about, I don't know what is.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's just something to be said with going forward for anyone listening in business, career, your future is that. And the thing is too, that I spoke about this on one of our podcasts literally yesterday. People when they get to the realm of like higher levels, is like if we look at the populations that we work with, it can be anyone in the coaching game. The higher the level of the person and the amount that they financially invest in your service, the more able to snip out bullshit that they are. A high
Oh
level
yeah.
athlete, a high level CEO, executive, like they don't have time to waste. They need to optimize and maximize their return. And if they can sniff an ounce of bullshit, they're not interested. So, this whole like, everyone always has that arrogance of like, I'm gonna change the lives of CEOs when I start out. And like you're a 22-year-old that's just finished PT school. And it's like, even if you manage to secure that client, they will call bullshit so quick because it's just a lie. Like there's just no social proof to it. There's no resume to it. There is a sense of like a fakeness you project on your social platform, but that inauthenticity comes through, and it's going to call it. Having the pleasure of being around Cav the way I have, like I can see in the athletes he works with, it's evident that they would be able to just go, "Fuck this guy."
Oh yeah. And listen, the ultimate pressure test for you to know if you provide value or not, raise your prices. If
Mm,
you're working with people right now and you're wondering if the value that you add exceeds the price that you charge, raise your prices. And you'll see immediately, there will be immediate, like if they're running for the fields, trying to get away from you as fast as possible, you're bullshit.
I like that. I like that.
I just went through a price increase for myself because knowing that I'm moving my business in a different direction,
Mm-hmm.
I went through a very significant price increase. We're talking like over $100 a month increase.
Wow.
I lost two clients out of 47, and one of those people transitioned to Olivia.
Wow.
And the guy who left lost 90 pounds last year and was going to leave anyway.
I really complain with that.
That's pretty great. 90 pounds in a year is pretty great.
Pretty fucking good.
But that to me was, I had to have a lot of faith
Mm-hmm.
in the product that I offer. And I had to have a lot of faith in the value that I provide the people that I work with to know that if I raise their prices that significantly, which in some cases was a 25% price increase,
Mm-hmm.
to know that they would stick around. And guess what? They all did. If you can take that leap of faith and put your money where your mouth is, literally, I challenge you to raise your prices.
Interesting.
And if you're a client of someone and you're listening to this podcast, you're a client of someone who isn't myself or Ben, think would I pay 25% more for the coach that I'm working with?
Mm,
And if your answer is no, then they're probably not worth what you're paying right now.
yeah, it's a fair way to put it.
It's money talks. And it's one of the like I personally don't like to use money as a metric, especially in my own business growth,
Hmm.
because I think it's a foregone conclusion. I've always been of that growth mindset of if I continue to do these great things, money will come.
Yeah.
So why focus on the money when I can just focus on doing the great things? Um, which sounds funny because I just mentioned money, but it's 100% true, which is why if I really was worried about how saturated the market is, do you think I would build a business to help other coaches build businesses?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
I'm literally making competition for myself.
Yeah. I fucking hate the idea that the
No.
industry is saturated.
Listen, you and I are both on this podcast because we know that if more coaches do great things, the industry as a whole will grow and bring more people in. So the pie grows.
Hmm.
And if the pie grows, we all get a little bit of a bigger slice.
Hmm.
In the grand scheme of things, you and I are very small fish for now.
Hmm.
This industry is massive, and there are people making hundreds and thousands of dollars a month, hundreds of millions of dollars a year. I'm okay that I'm not one of those people because you know what? I know that I show up every day with integrity,
Hmm.
and I know that the people that I get the pleasure of working with love working with me, and I'm having so much fucking fun.
Isn't there something just to be said like when you can have fun in the growth of it, not the destination of it? Like
Oh yeah.
that's where the projection of your business really occurs. Like if we look at the research and science of motivation, dopamine, anticipation, how it all intertwines, people get so caught up in like, I'll be happy when my business is doing that first 1,000 a week or that first 10,000 a month or what have you. But I find, as you sort of said, in that pursuit of the dollar value, you end up, ironically, almost losing money because your focus
Oh
is
yeah.
so much on the money itself, not the value you're providing to get the money. And that is where the biggest change is. I found most success in simply trying to solve as many problems and give away as much value and provide as much information and problem solving as I can. Where like our community is like, well, fuck, if this is what he's giving away for free, what's behind the paywall? What do I actually get one to one if I pay for this? Because what he's put out and what their system has out there is just ridiculous amounts of information. Like,
Mhm.
I have no question that if you really wanted to go back through our posts psychologically, nutritionally, physically, you could basically coach yourself. There is enough information on our content, podcasts, YouTube's, training videos. Like you could literally do it yourself, and it's
100%.
free. We pay for our marketing guy, we pay for our audio, our visual, sorry, our videography guy to make content. Come watch us, record us, train. Where I just pump out Q&As and just answer questions, solve problems, and like that is then put on YouTube for free for you to go watch, go listen to. We make sure that it's out there because it's like to us, the value is not in holding information behind a gate. It's like get it, use it, do it. It's free, make the most of it, and then it becomes like fuck. I've tapped out what's free, what's behind the wall. Well, there you go. Come on in. Like you're a better
I've
client.
actually I've been thinking about that a lot. And because so currently I charge $35 US a month for Coaches Corner University.
Mhm.
And I've been thinking a lot about either making it free or making it like $5
Mhm.
because there's 150 hours of content up on that website right now. Like we're talking, and everything is citations,
Mhm.
like 30 to 40-minute lectures,
Mhm.
and across any variety of topics. And one of the things that has always it kind of irks me is that I don't necessarily want to be charging for it because I think the information needs to get out there.
Yeah.
But at some point, there does need to be an investment on the part of the member party
Mhm.
to use it. And I
Yeah.
think if I made it free, I don't think that they would use it.
Pretty much have the
That's where the barrier for me is. So that's one of the things in 2024, like, you know, offer so much value that they want to pay for what's behind the paywall.
same.
I think for me, Coach's Corner is a passion project. I never saw it as something that could, it has the potential to earn a tremendous amount of revenue because it's the same amount of work for me, whether there's 5 people on the platform or 500.
Yeah.
But I just love teaching.
Yeah.
And the cool part is like, this month I wanted to dive into diet breaks, all
So
the research around diet breaks, and I wanted to dive into hypertrophy and the interaction with strength.
mhm.
So guess what? I just wrote 2 lectures on them, recorded them. Now I did my own continuing education for the month and just happened to post lectures on the site.
How good. Yeah, like
Double dipping, bruh.
double dipping, making the most of it. So we're like probably got a few more questions, I think, before we kind of like wrap
Sure,
up.
man.
We'll be here all day. But where did you really start with the notice that you were passionate about wanting to change the game? Like for us, it's been evident since I started like coaching. It's such a bare minimum game a lot of time. Like I've got a lot of clients come to me where they're like, what's all this information you're asking for? Why do you want to know about the menstrual cycle? What do you want to know about these things? And I'm like, what the fuck do you mean? Like this is the bare minimum to me of like info that I need to know to serve you properly and give you yes, the result, but simply a return on the value that you're exchanging. And I've had so many clients where like, again, it's not to name the other coach or anything like that, but just not even asking the basic questions or the right questions, where there's it's such a low standard of entry and acceptability of what's passed as coaching. Where I'm like, I don't accept that. I don't accept that. And as I said in my summit presentation at the Coach Catalyst Summit, sorry, is if you're willing to half-ass and sort of flunk your way through this industry and this game and working with people and helping them achieve a high level of performance in life, get out of my industry. And if you don't get out willingly, I will simply raise the game that much that you just either get better or you have to get out.
So it kind of evolved into that sort of mentality, but it genuinely initially came from me realizing that I just think differently about problems than most people.
Mm-hmm.
Um, even when it comes to the most basic concept around movement or nutrition, um, I just have a different way of critically thinking through problems. And I also have a very unique way of communicating. And I felt that if I wanted to continue to leverage my gifts, it had to come with this goal of elevating others
Mm-hmm.
because it's always been about teaching.
Mm-hmm.
So I just continued to teach. And the more I saw the direction the industry was going, I will never complain about things. I don't think complaining solves any problems. So
Yes.
I just don't do it. I also continue to look at things as a growth mindset. So some people will complain about, oh, such and such coach charges $700 a month. They're bullshit. They're trash. It's like, okay, but how are you better?
Mm-hmm.
Right? The only thing you can do to make sure that that coach gets what they deserve, so to speak, is to be better, to be the change. So I've just adopted that in everything that I do. I want to make it so our company is looked at as the highest level of coaching that you can receive.
Mm-hmm.
I want to make it so that Coaches Corner University is the place people go for their continuing education courses.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to make my business mentorship so robust and renowned that if you want to be a coach, you know that you got to go work with Paul and you're going to get to where you want to be. And that's purely from a driving value standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
It has like there's no vindictiveness attached. There's
Yeah.
no there's no malicious intent behind it to like crush my enemies and see them
Yeah.
driven before me. I'm glad you got that reference.
Oh yeah.
Um, it's just I just love what I do. And if I'm going to take the route of raising the bar for myself, well, I'm part of this industry, so I got to raise the bar for the industry too.
Yeah. I mean, well, there's really no better way to finish a conversation on performance and what inevitably became a conversation about performance and drive and that
Yeah, there you go.
inevitable inevitable push towards changing things and just getting better is
Yeah.
I feel like big thing that I believe and we've spoken about this on your podcast is once you identify that purpose in life that you have and once you identify what fulfills you, it becomes your not just your responsibility, but it becomes a necessity for you to pursue it and in that endeavor to make it happen. And very much like myself, for you, it's like we've identified this game needs to be better. And not just the game of body composition coaching, but simply the game of performance. Like, I'm a big believer that you perform in all areas of life. People have this weird perception of performance only for athletes or trainers or whatever it is,
Oh
executives,
no.
CEOs. You are performing in every ounce of your life, whether you like it or not. You're performing when you show up as a husband or wife, when you show up as a father, a brother or sister, when you show up as a friend, an executive, an employee, an athlete, a trainer, a gym goer, whatever it is. You're showing up everywhere. And to me, that is the essence of life to a degree, is performing to grow and be better. And so to me, the standard is being raised not just at body composition. That's such an ounce of the avenue of coaching. It's simply raising the overall bar standard or elevating that standard of what is performance and how performance is given.
It's also fucking easy.
Yeah.
Like, like, and I say that not to degrade anyone's goals, but I have had zero people come to me and say, I want to get in better shape for the sole reason of getting in better shape.
Mhm.
It is never the why. The why is always, I hate looking at myself in the mirror and I feel like shit. The why is, that client who lost 90 pounds, I can't kneel down on the floor to play with my kids.
Yep, exactly.
There is always a deeper why to body
Yep.
composition. And as a coach, you need to be supremely aware of that.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to create an environment of trust and empathy with your client so they're able to communicate those deeper motivations. Because as soon as you can do that, they will accomplish anything.
So best way to finish it, because we completely aligned on that. I've never once had a time where like the I want to drop 5 pounds client is successful. The I want to drop 5 pounds client has to become something so much deeper than 5 pounds. We both know you can manipulate body composition for body weight 5 pounds in 2 days. That's not a goal. There is always like a deeper reason behind why that weight matters. And usually it's something so much more significant you can anchor to. And that leads to real change in someone's life.
Even me in my bodybuilding prep, I wanted to do a bodybuilding prep, not because I wanted to get super shredded. I knew that I could get super shredded on my own,
Mm-hmm.
but I wanted to challenge myself mentally to a point I'd never been challenged before
Mm-hmm.
and do something I'd never done. So the bodybuilding show was a vehicle. The body composition shift that our clients are looking for, that's a vehicle for personal
Yes.
growth and development.
Yes. That is where my belief of performance and body composition coaching kind of overlaps, is that true body composition coaching is really a vehicle for the person they want to become, and
Mhm.
the habits and behaviors and systems that achieve that are the thing that they can cross over to the rest of life. That's where I
I
think
love
body
that.
composition got such a bad rap, and it's something that I've used. My vehicle of high performance for most people is simply improving body composition, because once they see the requirements to get that, they then just take those same principles and concepts to career, business, relationships, family, your education. The same person I am in the gym is the same person I am in university, because I know that competitively, if I just show up to be the average student, I fucking suck. I was a bad student in high school. Not bad, but the subjects I did like, I nailed. The subjects I hated had no interest. So I needed to find a way to take the lessons from bodybuilding, showing up even when you don't want to, being intense even when you're tired, and applying that to the subjects that I don't like in my degree, and still getting my distinctions, or like my credits are above average grades. And I think that's the lesson we try and push with people in their attack, like, fat phobic and it's anti this and anti diet culture and we don't like this and stuff, but there's so many lessons that body composition coaching can teach you that transcend just being about body fat. And that's where I think a lot of people get the mistake.
Yeah. And that parallels everything in life, like you said. So I love it.
All right, let's finish on a couple of questions here, because we're both in this game, and I think I want to know a few questions about where your head goes. What is the
Sure.
best change that you've seen in the industry in the last 10 years? Just one top of your head.
The best change I've seen in the industry, the best and the worst, social media, man. There's so much more knowledge available for
Yes.
every individual. Some of it's good, some of it's
Yeah.
bad, but I can say without a doubt that if I was starting now, I would my progress would be expedited fucking a
Mhm.
hundred times.
Worst change you've seen in the industry can't be social media.
Um, so this kind of comes with the type of person that Gen Z has become.
Hmm.
It's this constant quest for the best or the most optimal way of doing something
Yeah.
at the expense of hard work. And
Yes.
and what I mean by that is people will, demonize an exercise or demonize a diet or anything like that, but they'll forget that the biggest thing that matters is effort and consistency.
Hmm.
So they'll be perfect in their execution, but they'll leave 5 reps in the tank.
Yes.
Or they'll have perfect exercise selection and have no idea how to execute those movements. They'll pick the perfect diet and then they'll cheat every weekend.
Hmm.
That to me has been a big shift where before we would just squat, press, pull, and whatever, squat, press, pull, hinge, and we would eat whole foods and
Hmm.
we would train really hard and good things happened. I think that's the drawback to social media that we're seeing. I don't inherently think that the search for what's best and what's optimal is bad. I think it's only bad when it comes at the expense of the big
Yes.
rocks.
Yes. Completely agree. Um, One book that you would recommend readers go listen to improve either business, coaching, nutrition, and training, anything that's going to help orient growth.
I'm probably going to catch a lot of flack for this. My favorite book is actually Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand. I actually have a copy right here. It's a first edition copy of the book.
Hmm.
The most meaningful gift that's ever been given to me in my life. My good friend of mine, Cole Streets, who unfortunately I don't get to spend enough time with, but the premise of the book is self responsibility and self ownership,
Hmm.
and how being in alignment in all areas of your life has far reaching benefits.
Hmm.
Um, I would suggest everyone read it with a grain of salt and an open mind because there are a lot of conflicting ideas in there to what is considered the norm,
Yep.
but it is a phenomenally insightful book.
Love it. Last one, biggest piece of advice you'd give anyone going into 2024 with goals or new goals.
Make sure you actually want what you want.
Mm.
Um, a lot of times we pick goals because we think that that's what we want, when in reality, we likely want something close to, or we want the appearance of whatever this goal is.
Hmm.
I think very rarely do people spend time actually wanting what they want or creating an awareness over what their true desires are. Um, I put a goal in my head, financial goal in my head, only because I want what will lead to that.
Yes, I like that.
And I think that if you're setting a goal for 2024, make sure that you want what you want.
Clear, simple, easy. I love it. Mate, thank you very much for jumping on. As I said, this conversation could have gone 100 different ways. Just broke out and talked about training, but
Yeah, I
I
know.
love the fact I think that between us, we got really deep into some actual
I love it.
self-oriented growth and performance for people that can listen and really take some key insights away from both of us. Where I unfortunately, well, no, not unfortunately, it's building more. Getting to have these conversations more frequently and actually share these beliefs and ideas with people that we're starting to curate around, like the mastermind group, and have people who think similar without feeling weird. So I appreciate your time, given the time of year to jump on, before the year is over and right before you guys lead up to a holiday and a wedding. So appreciate you
Yeah,
having on, and we're really looking forward to a lot more linking up next year and actually catching up when we get stateside.
man, I would love that. Look forward to it. Thank you again for having me on.
Any links or details or social handles that we need to know, we can drop below.
For sure, yeah. So you can find me on Instagram at Paul Oneid, Pauloneid, at Master Athletic Performance, and at Coach's Corner U.
Fantastic. I appreciate it, my friend, and we'll no doubt talk again soon.
Sounds good. Talk to you soon.